Oh,
Good morning.
look at that.
Look at that. Look at you. Did you have a laugh about that?
Kind of did. Just thought I'd support your efforts.
It's pretty funny. Um, should we hit our sponsors?
Yeah.
I
Need
think we should.
essentials,
I
right?
think, I think we should. Yes.
I
Heck
absolutely
yes.
love Need Essentials, man. I've been wearing my Need Essentials. The water's warmer here, and I've been wearing my Need Essentials jacket, and it's light and right, and I'm stoked. I love Need Essentials. I'm a big fan, and I've got a friggin' wetsuit locker filled with Need Essential wetsuits, man.
My closet is filled with them too. Well, how's your overall general health, Scott Bass?
Well, I feel healthy. I do need to go in for a colonoscopy,
Do you really?
but sure, man, you'll get there.
Have you ever had one?
I have. Yeah. Insert colonoscopy joke here.
Yeah, I don't have a joke queued up for that. Maybe next week I'll think of one. Um, Best way to stay regular, Scott? Athletic Greens.
Wow.
Regular and fully healthy. I have a few bad habits, eating dietary habits, but this balances them out basically. For all of the holes I leave in my diet, this comes in and putties over everything and gives a smooth working surface for me to operate throughout my day. Not only physically, to be honest, like energy wise, but synaptically, brain wise. I feel sharper. That's why I was doing it for a while in the afternoons. Got to do it in the mornings, get the maximum benefit. Just wake up in the morning, do it in the morning. So it's 7 a.m. I'm going to ingest the 8 ounces right now. It's just water and green powder. And it's the easiest way to find optimal health.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I drink mine every morning with my breakfast. It's part of my routine. And yeah, Athletic Greens. Go there now, athleticgreens.com/surf to get your super special discount from Surf Splendor and Spit Podcast.
Awesome. On to today's show.
Let me ask you this. Yeah, Guy. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, Guy. It's Spit. We are talking all things surf. David Lee Scales, Scott Bass with you. It's Thursday. We took a day off. It's Thursday, June 17th. And we were speaking earlier about, or you were speaking about lapses in your diet. What's the one sort of area in your diet where you're like, oh, I shouldn't eat this, but I do anyway?
Two things.
Yeah.
Alcohol and sugar. Those are my two vices.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And it's not excessive, but it's if I cut it out, I feel like I'd be 20 pounds lighter and sharp, but it's like I just enjoy it so much that I feel that it's okay to not live a super regimented life. Like if you are generally healthy and happy because of those things, then that's maybe a better equation for me than just being 100% healthy and then sacrificing some of my comfort and enjoyment,
Yeah. All right. Well,
what are yours?
Mine are more specific. I have a problem, and it's a Lorna Doone problem. Lorna Doone shortcake cookies. And what I do is I get the Lorna Doones, and then I get a dark chocolate sea salted caramel.
Holy guacamole.
Yeah. So you take the Lorna Doone shortcake cookie and you combine it with this caramel and you put it in your mouth and you chew it, and there's an explosion of
Are you making a sandwich?
Not physically. I'm kind of making the sandwich as I chew. I put a little bit in and and then make this thing in my mouth, which sounds quite gross. But yeah, that would be my issue. I have a little Lorna Doone problem.
So it's not as if there's if you put a Lorna Doone on the bottom and the top, it'd be too much Doone, right? The ratio would be off. So what you're talking about is just one Doone and one caramel.
One little bite of each. And you just kind of, go through. Now, the problem is to my right over here in my cabinet, there's a stack of Lorna Doone's cookies. Because when I go into the grocery store, I literally look both ways down the aisle and make sure nobody's in there. And then I just scoop the whole thing of Lorna Doones into my cart. And I show up at the checkout lady or person. And she's like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, my kid's having a birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
and I have to lie about my Lorna Doone intake. And
Distributing these to the homeless population. I'm doing a good deed.
This is the first sign of an addiction, when you have to lie about your situation.
Well, and the fact that they're hidden in your garage away from your family's view is also
No, they're not hidden. They're just stored. I proudly display them. I have no problem. It's just that my snack drawer in my kitchen's filled with them. So the leftovers, like I said, I basically empty the grocery store when I go there.
So what about the chocolate though? You're being vague about the brand of chocolate.
The chocolates come from Costco, and it's one of those big sort of jars, kind of like this, filled with.
Okay, I support it. I support this habit, Scott.
Could be worse.
Well, did you trade in the sourdough?
Oh my God, the sourdough's still going strong, but the sourdough's a part of my deal for sure.
And then the thing with sourdough is butter. You got to have excellent butter with it, So then that's another vice.
Well, let's be truthful. That's all it is it's a transference of butter. It's like lobster, you know what I mean? Like, it's really just a way to move the butter from one area to the mouth,
So that's the problem with wine for me, is that it's a gateway to just way more calories, because if I had a small portion of dinner without wine, that's all I would eat. But the wine loosens up your inhibitions and like your restrictor valve, And so then it's like, you know what? I'm going to have a second helping. You know what else sounds good? Ice cream. After ice cream, a chocolate sounds great right now. And then, one glass after that, then you're loosened up. You're like, a second glass of wine too. I'm having a second plate of food. I need another glass of wine to go with it. And all of a sudden you've tripled your calorie intake for the day. So it's not just the glass of wine itself or the second glass of wine. It's all that comes with it. The cavalcade.
Yeah. So do you just drink 2 glasses of wine, or do you ever find yourself drinking more than 2 glasses of wine?
Oh, I've drunk way more than 2 glasses, but but Lauren's not drinking because she's pregnant. And so, we like to be on the same wavelength, you know what I mean? So a glass of wine, last night I drank I drank a third of the bottle. So it'd be like a glass and a half, 2 glasses.
Wow.
It's not much.
Yeah, that's kind of mean though, huh? They like drink wine and she's like, oh, I'd love a glass of wine, but I can't. So you kind of just, maybe why don't you stop drinking alcohol while she's pregnant?
I did for the first couple of months.
No. I said, you didn't hear what I said. While she's pregnant, the full term.
Yeah, I should. You're right. Good. I should stand in solidarity. Yeah, I can.
Okay. Would it be difficult?
I'd miss it, but it wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah.
I'd be, but you know what the balance is? She has to give up wine, but now she loves ice cream. And so it's like now that's in the house all day, every day. And we still have 3 or 4 pints that are unfinished. Either one of us go to the grocery store, get another pint. Because it was like the flavor you saw last time, but you didn't get. I need to get that now.
Well, it's the 21st century, but one of the great sort of underreported Travisham mockeries of the 20th century was when Haagen-Dazs stopped making their vanilla fudge ice cream, which was the most insane but the flavor that they had. It was incredible, the vanilla fudge. And for some reason, they must have found out I liked it. And they said, let's ruin Scott's life. And they stopped making vanilla fudge Haagen-Dazs.
God forbid Lorna Doone gets any wild ideas.
Yeah. Lorna Doone, she's a sweetheart.
You know what you should do is smash up some of that Lorna Doone in the vanilla ice cream. That would be amazing.
Yes, this would be amazing. All right, awesome. We've bored the living crap out of our surf listeners.
Everybody loves food. Everybody can relate to food.
That's a good point.
I only really watched and did 2 things in this week in regard to, actually, I was going to talk about East. I was going to talk about East. I was going to talk about Lost Track, but I should say first, Scott, because I need to alert listeners.
Yes.
All of our generous subscribers who contribute $5 a month, they are entered to win a Channel Islands 2 Happy this month.
Oh my God. They're psyched.
I'm giving one away on July 1st. And all we do is randomly, there's a Wheel of Fortune app. and I copy and paste everybody's names into the app, and it puts them on the Wheel of Fortune. I click spin, and the thing spins, and it picks a winner randomly. Those names are compiled from our loyal donors and subscribers. So you could do that on surfsplendorpodcast.com. There's a subscription tab, and it keeps us in business, basically. Ad revenue over the years is kind of up and down at times, but this core foundation of support from our listeners is what keeps us in business. And so as a thank you, we like to do these types of giveaways. And so the Channel Islands 2 Happy is their current kind of everyman shortboard. The Happy model was their high performance shortboard that the pros were riding to great success. This one's kind of modified to make it more user-friendly and also wider variety of waves to be surfed in. I have one. I was riding it for probably 2 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
I do. I busted the fin box in it. 6'1", I think.
How wide is it?
I'll send you the dims. I don't.
Okay. I have a confession.
Okay.
To make.
Okay.
To you and to all the listeners.
Oh, great.
Yesterday, I went on a surfboard binge, and because I'm riding this 180 surfboards that I really like, but it's 6'4", but I really like it. I just want it a little smaller, what I think I really like is both the fins, but I think the dished out tail, the single concave. So I went on to Channel Islands site. I'm like, I'm buying a new board. What I really like is the round tail, the round tail. I was like, wow, it just feels so neutral. Like I said earlier, it feels neutral. Like I'm in control of what's going to happen next, And so I went on to Channel Islands and I scoured their site, as I've done many times. And I'm like, you know what? I want a Neckbeard 3. Neckbeard 3 seems to be, and I looked at the dims and I'm like, those are the dims. It's like 20 and a quarter or 20 and a half, a 6'2" Neckbeard 3. It looks like the right one, It had the single concave. And I tried to buy it. I was just going to buy it right there. $800, $850, whatever. They're out of stock. Like, of course they have been, and everyone has been for the last year and a half. This isn't not the first time this has happened to me where I'm like, I've got $1,000 in my hand. I want to give it to you.
I know.
And I can't do it. I can't make the transfer of the commerce take place. I want to buy a brand new surfboard from Channel Islands, a Neckbeard 3, and I end up scouring all the Hansons and Encinitas and Surf Ride in Oceanside and Surf Ride in Solana Beach and Mitch's. And I just can't find the right board. And it's frustrating.
Did you reach out to our friends there?
Nah, I don't feel like I want to just pay retail. Like I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey bro, do you got a Neckbeard 3? Like I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Plus, frankly, Devin's been telling me he's going to get me a board for like a year and a half. I've never seen a board. I've never seen one. You know what I mean? When I get a Channel Islands, it's because I go to Surf Ride and I pay, which again, I don't mind doing. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying there's a lot of, let's get a board under your feet, Scott. And I never, ever see a board from Devin.
That's amazing.
You, however, seem to get a lot of boards.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking the Neckbeard 3 wasn't out yet. I thought the end of the story was going to be they had it on their website as like a coming soon.
No, it's out of stock, like everything.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, God bless them. I'm stoked that they're busy and I know that, it's a tough time.
Well, they have too many.
That's the board
they have so many models though. That's the other thing is how do you even roll out all of those? Because the one that I'm hyped about is the twin fin.
Yeah, I know that Michael February's riding.
And that Tom Curran was riding in that Free Scrubber film,
Was that the same board?
Yeah.
Oh.
They've been working on that with Tom for a year or two. And so I'm like, man, I'm really looking forward to seeing that thing come out. But then I want to see the Bobby Quad too. The Bobby Quad looks sick. And I also need a shortboard. So I need the 2 Happy, and it's just like, you can't keep up with all of it. And they can't keep up, obviously, with
what's weird? I just went to Channel Islands Surfboard's website, and guess what popped up? The Neckbeard 3 and the 2 Happy.
Because they heard us talking about it.
I don't know, bro.
The algorithm caught us.
The Neckbeard 3 is insane, bro.
I haven't even looked at it. I'll look at it.
I sound like Mason Ho. This is a great segue into the.
It is. So by the way, though, subscribe to our podcast, support us, win a Neckbeard or a 2 Happy.
Man, I want one of these. How do you get them to give away to customers? Subscribers. I can't even buy one off their website.
Well, that's the thing. The winner may have to wait for it. Put it in the production queue.
How long?
Well, look, at times I give away the one that the shaper gives me to ride.
Yeah.
But this one, Britt Merrick shaped it. It has my name on it. I didn't feel right giving it away. And it works out better for the listener too, because they can get one dialed to their specs. So we'll get them a stock one to their specs off the site.
It'll be a 3 happy by the time.
I know. All right, so get into it.
Okay,
Mason.
yeah. So look, East, right? We're going to call it East, the electric acid surfboard test produced by Stab and the guys there, and they do a great job, and we love it. And we love it so much that.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Just because it's a follow-up from last week.
Yeah.
Did the shapers get enough credit? Because that was your concern.
I wouldn't say they got not enough credit. Do you think that they got plenty of credit?
I thought they really did. I thought
really?
Completely.
You thought Panda got a lot of credit. They barely even talked about that board.
True. That board didn't, but
and I thought they surfed that board really well.
I agree.
Kokoho definitely did.
I agree. They did a long kind of intro for the Bobby Quad explaining, not only the Channel Islands legacy and the buyback, but also how that board came to be and Bobby's significance. Then with the Mayhem twin, they spent a bunch of time on that. They even got Aquila Ipa to break down all of the context. So I thought it was very, very design focused with a huge emphasis on the shapers, except for Panda. You're right. That was the one that they kind of didn't hit too hard.
I thought that Coco absolutely ripped the Channel Islands, the Bobby Quad, right? That was the green one she was on, I think.
Yeah.
But let me back up a little bit and kind of come back to what.
Sorry.
So let me just say this, and again, I'm being hypercritical, and this isn't an attack on anyone. This is just my thoughts on it. I'm not convinced that the two hoes are the best communicators of the breakdown of the surfboards. Like I said last time, right? Their surfing tells me more about the boards than their verbal breakdown of the boards post-surf. Now, Coco is absolutely adorable. Mason Ho is gregarious. They're both fun. They're incredibly cute together. You learn a lot about the brother-sister relationship and sort of the sibling
dynamic.
Thank you. But there's a lot of kind of deep surfer code vernacular. And the one thing that I take away from this, if there's one big takeaway for me, and you've already mentioned it, who do you think provided the best insight?
Ashton?
No. Aquila Ipa.
Oh, yeah.
Aquila Ipa was the best communicator. And
super effective.
We both know that Aquila Ipa absolutely shreds or surfs well enough to be the test pilot for this. Now, he said some stuff like, here's a great quote. Everyone's trying to crack the code of the twin fin, blending performance with freedom. That sentence right there is great insight. And that really is what we're trying to do as both surfers and, of course, the shapers, right? So backing up a bit, what are your thoughts on I don't want to say criticism, but I love the hose, and I'm looking forward to today's episode, and I'm looking forward to more of Coco Ho and Mason Ho. I'm just not convinced that they're the best communicators of post-surf, how the board works.
They're not, but I think the entertainment value from them is worth having them on, especially if you can bolster their surfing with feedback like Aquila's, which I don't know that they'll be able to in every episode. That was just happenstance that Aquila was down there. But I agree with you. I got a comment from a listener who said they had to stop watching it because of Mason. And I fully actually related to that. I didn't stop watching, but I related to it. And Mason's great in small tidbits, but asking him to kind of break down this stuff, his shtick, which isn't shtick, it's actually his kind of earnest way of communicating, is exhaustive to try to track. And like, what was interesting was that Coco would be on a thought and like being like pulling it out, kind of pulling the thread, getting it out. And then Mason would either interject or she would even defer, like, what do you think, Mason? And he would give his his way of communicating, which doesn't make sense to anybody. Like you said, it's this deep coded surfy vernacular that's unique to him and his region that he's from or whatever. It's encoded. And then she would go, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, Coco, you can decipher the code because you're siblings and you've been around him his whole life. You understand, apparently. And I thought that she'd actually laugh at him and be like, Mason, that doesn't make any sense at all. But she never once laughed at him. She fully understood what he was talking about each time. And to be honest, I could kind of glean what he would be talking about as well. But it required a lot of the viewer. Sometimes you're in a conversation with somebody and you feel like you're doing 90% of the communicating. That's how I felt watching Mason. I'm like, running a calculus of 5 things that you could be meaning and then you'll have a follow-up sentence. And I go, oh, based on that follow-up, he meant the one of the 5 things over here, but that's a lot for me to engage in.
You absolutely nailed it, David. I can't say it any better than that. That is what we're running up against here in episode 1. And, I sincerely think that the best East test pilot might be a shaper, and this is hard to get, right? A shaper who rips,
Daniel Thompson,
who also has enough humility to ride different boards, none of his boards, and to be forthright and to be honest. And that's a really hard combination to come by, because who wants to go out there and basically pimp all your competitors, right? But Akila Aipa is an example of a guy who might be that guy. There's another guy, Ryan Sakel, absolutely rips. He would be a guy that might be that guy, because I know Ryan has enough humility to just be like, hey, I really like this board. I wish, Ryan's the type of guy that would be like, I can't wait to make one like this, or what, you know what I mean? So, and then of course we did get some follow-up about our discussion about who would be really good in this. And I think you and I came up with Birch maybe, or some others. And the obvious one that I don't think we came up with, we may have in the past, is Dave Rostovich.
Yep.
Dave Rostovich would be one. I think he's a great communicator. And obviously his surfing does a lot of communicating. Now, let me ask you this. When you watched Mason and Coco ride the different boards, I'm sure you found yourself going, he's not riding that one as good as the other one.
Totally.
Did you sense that?
Completely.
And which board did you think he rode better relative to?
In order, the Panda, they rode the best. The Bobby Quad second, but the waves were wrong for that board. And then the Mayhem Twin was by far the worst.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got too. Anyway,
what stood out to me was, or what kind of shocked me, was how little they know about boards, trends in the market, designs, and shapers. Our listeners know far more than they do. I mean, they'd pick up a board, the Morning of the Earth, Simon Jones shaped board, and they had never seen anything like it before. And the album, they were just like, oh yeah, I think I've seen that this aesthetic kind of matches what I've seen online, or something. They just, even the names of shapers they had never heard of before. People that have been in your and my orbit for a decade now that I feel are household names, somehow Mason Ho has never heard of. And that's fine. That's neither here nor there. He doesn't have to know about them. He only rides Mayhems, and you
could argue that's a good thing in a weird way, that there's an objectivity there.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's just, I was surprised by it. I was surprised how narrow their focus was. The other thing is, I thought the Mayhem Twin looked bad and they were surfing it wrong, but I also felt like they knew it was a Mayhem. And so when they talked about it, they spoke more favorably about that board than any other board, and they were bogging on it, and the thing that I appreciated was that they even said, I was surfing the board wrong. I realized after a couple that I should have been, I don't know what they said, but doing this instead of that. And I thought that was pretty self-aware. But the fact that they got off that surf experience and was like, that board's great. I was like, wait, what? That's not the footage we saw, And that was a prototype board, by the way. I'm not throwing Mayhem under the bus. That is a board that's in, R&D, and they were writing it incorrectly. But
well, Matt's smart enough to make sure that he puts the word prototype on this East, this.
Yeah.
Which is a smart move, by the way. I'm just still developing it.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't think that they surfed that board particularly well. I really thought that Coco Ho surfed the Bobby quad really, really well. She was ripping on that thing.
Yeah.
Like just smooth and natural, and everything was flowing together. And
Best
it's
she's ever
amazing
surfed.
how much, you know, a pinched rail or a thinned out rail, because those Mayhems were kind of beaky and full up in the top half, and it looked like the wide point was forward. That's probably not something that those two are used to riding.
Totally.
But anyway, it's going to be fun. Here's another name I'll throw at you real quick. Harrison Roach was thrown my name my way. I think that's an interesting one.
I think he fits. I don't see him nearly enough, you know, but everything that I've always seen of him, of course, he surfs like a wide variety of boards beautifully and stylishly and all that.
What shapers make sense? And by the way, tell me, I would be absolutely stoked if Aquila Ipa just did this. Like if next year they go, we're picking Aquila Ipa, I'd be like, this is perfect. We've got, you know, second generation Hawaiian shaper who absolutely rips, who was a great communicator. I mean, the stuff that he said made tons of sense. He was very thoughtful. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Aquila Ipa? Would you be excited? Would you? I guess I'm looking at it more like I want somebody to break down the board design in a kind of a granular fashion.
I think that just has such a narrower audience that really wants that level of communication or that level of detail in the design. So firstly, Aquila's had a back injury, like a pretty significant one, and he's been coming off of that for like 2 years. And so his surfing isn't up to what you might remember it being. Yeah. So he's coming off of that. But Daniel Thompson, obviously. So the problem with everybody that you've said is like Ryan Sakel, for example, is yes, Ryan surfs great, but it's not to the level of, you know, Mason Ho and the other Stephanie Gilmore.
But that's okay. I think that's okay. I do. Because when I
think
watch,
it takes a lot away from the entertainment of it.
I'm not saying it doesn't. From the entertainment, you're right. You know, like we don't get to watch one of the hottest surfers in the world rip like Mason and frankly Coco.
It would be hard to watch 30 minutes of it, 4 episodes of 30 minutes, you know?
Maybe. And that's, again, we're sort of picking the eyeballs out of it here, but I'm always watching the board as much as I'm watching I'm looking at how the board's reacting off the bottom. I'm looking to see if there's a chink in the armor of the bottom turn. Like maybe I'm, you know, this is just me. I'm kind of grinding in on the way the water's flowing off the board when they're doing turns, mostly bottom turns and transitions. I want to see how the board transitions, you know? But anyway, Aquila Ipa, I like the idea of a shaper who rips doing this, but again, it's difficult. You need, like I said, you need humility, and that's really hard to find. Somebody that's going to like take their ego out of the equation. And by the way, you mentioned Daniel Thompson. I just did a podcast with him. It'll be coming up on the Boardroom podcast next week. Nice.
Is he coming to the Boardroom show?
He's trying really hard to get here. Cool. You know, he's in Australia. He's got a knee injury, but he's planning on being here in September. Yeah.
So Daniel would be a great one, I think, and also surfs to the level of professionals, modern professionals even. Ryan Birch would be the obvious one we already discussed.
Well, here's the thing. Let's again remember, I think the critical thing here is to offer honesty without ego, like this idea of humility to praise. And I'm not saying those guys have ego. I'm just saying it's naturally inbred to be, not inbred, but it's a natural thing to just, so like when you think about shapers that shred, and I actually think Ryan Birch would be good. And I think Daniel would be good too. But just keep that in mind, that the key to this whole puzzle is a shaper that has humility.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I've thought of some guys, I'm like, I don't know, he might not, you know, what you don't want is a guy going, oh, this is lame. Or
of course.
You know, like, so anyway.
So Kelly Slater is actually the next pilot, test pilot.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Do you know that for a fact?
Well, Danny Johnson, who works for Stab and does their podcast called The Drop, he announced it on the podcast. He kind of mentioned it in passing. It wasn't like a huge, we have a new announcement. He just mentioned, he mentioned it. And
how did he mention it? How did it come down?
It was casual. It was like, Kelly's getting boards for the next Stab electric acid surfboard test, you know, so look forward to that kind of a thing.
That's cool. Well, that's going to be great, right? That the only problem with that is we're anticipating it's going to be the best one ever. And how do you top it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you go out on a winning note here?
Well, look, I think, sorry, I gotta open this window. It's getting hot in here. I don't think they have to worry about how to top it or when to peak, so to speak. Like they can, things change from year to year and there'll be new people and new concepts. And I think one of the strengths of this concept, which we weren't sure about last week, is the fact that there's two surfers. I liked having both Mason and Coco, and the real key there was that they made boards for each of them. It wasn't that they were sharing a board. They had specific customs made for each of them. So I thought that was really smart.
Yeah, here's hoping that Mason stops kind of stepping on Coco's thought process, or maybe the filmers realized it, or the editors, and they're going to pull them away from each other and have them talk separately, individually.
I don't think they do. I think not everybody, but I think up until this moment, they thought more was more. They thought Mason is great on camera. Mason's charismatic. And so let's just let Mason go. And the reality is it's not true. Well, he has his limitations. And I love Mason. You know what I mean? Like I hope we're not coming off as sounding like we're making fun of him in any way. It's just
no, we're just being hypercritical. Well, maybe not hyper, but this is our job, is to drill down. We love the electric acid surfboard test, and I'm looking forward to seeing Mason and Coco rip some more.
Yeah. But the Panda, you're giving the Panda the Pandas the Shriz is your pick for episode 1.
It's kind of a toss up. I love the way that Coco is riding the Bobby quad, but both those boards looked really good.
So it's interesting. The Bobby quad is so short, right? And like, this is kind of, we see trends develop. I mean, the 5.5 by 19.25 thing, the mid-length thing the last year or two. And this is kind of out of left field, going super short. Quads aren't exactly in vogue at the moment, you know? And so I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't see this board coming, but everybody who's ridden it, because I do talk to those guys at Channel Islands, they've been telling me about it for a year. And they're like, dude, this thing's unreal. Yaden Nichols, like that's all that he's riding. Obviously Bobby's into it. All the R&D team there, like the employees are loving it. So curious to see more on it.
Yeah.
Are you into quads?
Dude, I mean, I ride everything, and I've had short quads, you know, but not really that short. I can't ride boards that short, but
I mean, it's
I love quads. Oh yeah. That's ridiculous. You know what? Here's my hope, that everybody buys a 5-foot quad. And I'll just be on my 7.2 just going, coming down. No, that's horrible. That's why surfers are the worst right there.
Not at all. That's totally fine.
But yeah, I mean, look, I love the quad, and I've got a new one coming from my friend Wayne Rich. He's making me a 510. That's right. 510 is about as short as I go these days. Yeah. If somebody tries to convince me that I need a 5.2, I'm not sure. They don't realize how old I am.
Well, again, I got to see them ride that Bobby quad more. I haven't seen enough footage on it, you know, but sometimes it unlocks something in your brain. They're surfing it differently, that it unlocks something in your brain. You go, oh, I just need to stand here or do this instead. And the board works.
Well, you and I are either in front of or behind the curve, because I'm back on 6.2 tri-fins with a bunch of concave for lift. And I the other day I was doing a couple, you know, I just one or two. I had a couple of waves where for the first time in a long time, I was like down to bottom going, I'm going right up there with this board because it's narrow enough and it's got this fin back here that's going to allow me to. Now, I'm sure I was going at 9 o'clock. I felt like I was going at 12 o'clock, but the idea that there was an oncoming section that I was going to go up and over rather than drive around, you know.
How good does that feel?
It felt great. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, oh my God, this is almost the board. I just need it in a 6.2. And that's when I started scouring websites for this. And I want a round tail. I just got a really cool Pizell squash tail, but I forgot how much I love round tails.
Yeah. That feeling though of going vert like that when you've been riding like bigger, wider boards for a year. And then the waves get good and you take out the thruster and you really hit the lip the way that you want to. You're like, oh, I still got it. Like it actually felt good.
I had that experience. I know exactly where you're coming. And the first time, like I was down at the bottom going, I think I actually can go up there with this board. It was sort of tentative. And then I'm like, oh yeah, and then you're like, paddling around going, oh, I'm going to do that. And that's all I was thinking about. Like, we're just going to go straight up on a couple because this board does that,
I had the wave yesterday, but like the perfect shortboard right runner with like 2 or 3 sections on it, but I was on the mid length. And so, but as I was bottom turning, I was looking at that section going, oh my gosh, I so wish, and unfortunately I just had to like go up and high line it and then come down, which was still fun. But then I realized that I was kind of beating myself up thinking like, man, I should have still just tried to like crack that thing. And then I was walking up the beach and I thought, I wouldn't have even gotten into the wave if I was on the shortboard. Like when that wave was approaching, I positioned in the lineup for it just effortlessly because I was on the mid length. And the way that I paddled into it as well, it like, I would have had to take off later on the shortboard. I might have been behind it for the bottom turn. I wouldn't have been able to get up to that section. But because I positioned in the lineup and then I kind of angled into it and had the early entry and was able to be driving off the bottom at that moment was all because of the mid length,
Yeah, it's funny because this board that I'm riding from Bob it's a 6'4". And so as I'm on the beach going, man, if I just had a 6'2" of this, and then I do go to that thought that you just had, like, I might not be able to catch as many waves. Like the 6'4" paddle's like a dream, I'm picking up everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I had a talk with Daniel about, you probably saw on Daniel's Instagram, maybe he basically threw a question out to the public about what's the perfect performance nose look like? Do we really need a sharp nose and have a performance board that you're comfortable with? You feel like it's going to take you to the same places that a super pointy nose board. They look basically those last 2 inches. Do we need those last 2 inches? Can we just somehow dolphin off that nose? And even probably more important to the marketplace, will the public buy into it? We're all so conservative. We're like, oh, it doesn't have a pointy nose. No, it doesn't look sexy enough, Anyway.
Yeah. What are your thoughts to that? What's your answer?
My thoughts are, I don't care what I look like, walking down the beach. Like I would much rather have a dolphin nose surfboard. And I'm convinced that a dolphin nose surfboard is going to go to the same places.
I think it does too.
Yeah.
I don't think you need those last 2 inches.
No.
Surf Ranch starts tomorrow. Rio is officially gone. There's all sorts of WSL news. Were you surprised to see Rio removed from the list?
No, you and I both have been speaking about this probably since they first put it on the list. We're like, that's not going to happen. And it's no surprise. And it's sort of interesting that, I guess they're just throwing, mud on the wall to see what sticks about a year ago when they put that on the calendar. And yeah, not surprised and whatever.
And won't miss it, by the way.
Thank you.
Barra got moved to August 10th to make room for the Olympics and everybody's kind of potential quarantine traveling to and from Tokyo. So Barra is in Mexico. Do you think that will happen?
I do. I do think that will happen.
Me too.
That area is open for travel for tourists, surfing tourists. Everyone's down there surfing. It's kind of like, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 years, it's been sort of, I don't know what the phrase is, the spot du jour, if you will, or that would be spot of the day. How would you say French in French? How would you say? En vogue, yeah, spot de vogue. Spot de vogue.
And then Tahiti got moved back a couple of days to August 24th, and then we'll end at Lowers. So that's what the rest of the season looks like. Beach Grit rumored that Snapper is gone. Did you see this news?
I did see this news.
So from Derek Riley.
When it comes from Derek, you feel like there's some validity to it.
Agreed. So he gave a quote from the state tourism minister, Sturls Hinchcliffe. And actually, before I get to that, I'll give you Derek's writing. He says, sensing blood, New South Wales and Western Australia created war chests of up to $5 million to snatch the event away from Queensland, which offered $500,000 towards the running of the event, believed to cost around $4 million. The number that I've heard from insiders is that it costs $3 million to run an event nowadays, not 4, but at the time, the state tourism minister, Sturls Hinchcliffe, said he was, quote, disappointed that the WSL's decision to chase short-term dollars at the expense of surfing tradition. The WSL made it clear holding the event at Snapper Rocks this year was conditional on the Queensland's government picking up the quarantine tab for the WSL's international competitors. And Long Tom had a pretty salient quote, I think, that not only applies to this situation, it kind of, and it wasn't written about this article, it was written kind of about a different event, but I think it applies to a much bigger picture. And Long Tom said, without a functioning business model to wean itself off of state tourism bodies, the WSL is locked in a prison of its own making.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to get revenues, sponsorship dollars somewhere. If it's from Michelob Ultra, there's still a prison you're in. You know, if you're
Yes.
if you're banking, I understand what he's saying. He's basically saying without tourist dollars from bureaus, you know, chambers of commerce, so to speak, governments, we can't run events. Well, without dollars, you can't run events. So who cares where you get the dollars from?
Look, I think the point there is those state tourism things were, they've always been used or they've been collected when possible, but they were never the core business model. And I think that the WSL has gotten itself into a position where they don't have sponsorship dollars coming in anymore. And let's go way back, by the way, for the listener. Prior to it being the WSL, it was the ASP. And the ASP's model was the event costs at that time $2 million to run. So they would have one of the big surf brands sponsor each event to the tune of $2 million to cover all the costs. And then for that, the sponsor, Quicksilver, let's say, would get the rights, the licensing rights to the visuals, the footage, the content from the event. So they would either use that in their own marketing and or also try to work licensing deals on the side to then sell it for, you know, streaming on or for television viewing or whatever. So they were able to recoup that $2 million investment. That business model worked to varying degrees. Sometimes it worked great. Other times, you know, it'd be a loss, but it worked because especially the brands were still making money by selling all the clothing and all that sort of stuff. So it made sense. If it was just a marketing expense, they still would have done it without the back end earning. Well, the WSL came in and they threw that model out and they said, no, we are going to retain all of the content licensing rights because we have these ideas for ways that we can put this out into the public. Well, now it's been 7-8 years that the WSL has been doing it and they've struggled to do that successfully. So now they've been going that long without having the $2 or $3 million sponsor revenue coming in per event. And now they're it feels like now they're kind of working these other deals to try to make up for those losses. But I think to Long Tom's point is, if you didn't realize the business model was broken in the last 8 years, then don't make these decisions. Don't forego the Snapper event just because the money's over here right now. There's a much bigger picture at play, and you're making these very short-term decisions, and you've lost the plot. You know?
Yeah. No, these are great points, and that's a really great breakdown that you did. And a couple of things on top of that too. You know, when the WSL sort of changed the model, and they I think they were assuming, hey, what we'll do is we're going to change the model. The brands don't get the license to the end content anymore. We own it. But hey, would you still like to sponsor this event? And the Quicksilvers were like, no. And oh, by the way, it was sort of a perfect storm because at that point, Quicksilver and Billabong were in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You know, like it was kind of like not a good time for brands to go, yeah, I'll give you $2 million. Now, when the ASP was running it, the other cool thing that the brands got, first they were flush with cash. Everything was rosy, you know, 2002, whatever, internet booms going off. And they got the ability, like Quicksilver could, or say Billabong could run an event, Kelly Slater could win it, and they could market Kelly Slater, even though he was a Quicksilver guy.
Yep.
And that didn't obviously go well with a lot of people, but that was one of the benefits too. And it was like everyone was kind of it was very incestuous. Everyone would go down to the SEMA Surf Summit together and shake hands and kiss babies, and we're all making money. And then the whole thing is blown up. They're basically like, so anyway, that's enough out of me about that. But yeah.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm surprised by is that the WSL hasn't transitioned into a subscription model yet. I mean, the writing was on the wall for subscription kind of servicing 5 years ago, if not more. I mean, if not pay-per-view, like NBA, NFL, like everybody has this kind of access, all access type pass. Disney has their own streaming now. Everybody, you and I have a subscription service. Stab Magazine has Stab Premium subscription service. The fact that the WSL hasn't just said, look, instead of chasing 100 million viewers, you know, and then trying to have all these revenues coming in from all these sponsors, let's just focus on 5 million viewers and have them each give us $60 a year. They could run a business on that. Let
me ask you this, and I'm wondering if this is what goes through their mind when they're thinking about this process and this model that you've summarized here. Let's say they go, Snapper, we're going to do it. It's a subscription model. It's, like you said, $60 a year and whatever, $5 an event. And they do it, but some guy goes down to the beach with his camera and just goes, you know what, I'm going to live stream this. And my point is that because they're not in arenas like soccer or football or baseball or basketball, they don't control the content.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's what's necessarily going to happen, but you got to know that there's going to be some rogue. Now, I know they don't get the production value. They don't get the commentary. They don't get the professional broadcast team. They're just going to get Joe Blow on the beach going, hey, I'm going to film. But I'm sure that goes through part of the, and let me also say this before you jump in. I think they were going to go to a subscription model and then COVID hit, and you're not going to do a subscription model when you don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. The Joe Blow,
you and I were gearing up for a subscription model to happen like any month right before COVID.
Well, because we were talking about it 3 years ago, and then they sent out a survey asking if we would be. Remember that they sent out a survey, literally going, "Would you be willing to pay? What amount would you be willing to pay?" But the Joe Blow filming thing, if there's a big UFC fight on, I want to see like the knockout and the final, submission or whatever, but I don't want to pay the $60 for the event. What I do is I go on Twitter and I search the hashtag for the event. And there's a bunch of people who did exactly what you said. They filmed the TV and I watch it. I just watch the highlight that I wanted to see. And that's my workaround. So that's the equivalent. The people that are posting that on Twitter are the equivalent of the guy filming on the beach. But the UFC still sells millions of pay-per-views, despite me finding the workaround. They still make their money, So the WSL won't be able to stop certain things like that. Yeah. But they'll build an amazing viewing experience that you and I have no problem paying the $5.
I think what you're saying is if their product is good enough, they don't have to worry about that.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that allows them to have the freedom to make the right decisions for surfing, like put the best surfers in the best waves and all that sort of stuff. They're not beholden to all of these other, whoever.
So let me ask you this, and you may have mentioned this earlier and I missed it, but where does the Snapper event, where are they going? Are they going, we know they're going to Bells, right?
Well, Bells is still on. Bells, I guess, is on for 3 years, but based on Derek's thing saying that, New South Wales and Western Australia created war chests of up to $5 million.
Okay.
The event would be in one of those two states. And we don't know. They have not announced a location.
Where would you like to see New South Wales?
I mean, Lennox, but they're not going to, they already got booted out of Lennox previously.
What about, is Byron? No, Byron's too much like San Onofre.
I don't know of like high performance. But by the way, I'm going to miss Snapper. Like, I think Snapper is a phenomenal event and it adds something that there's no other venue on tour, and I guess the legacy, I mean, I was shocked to see it's only actually been on tour since 2002. I thought,
but I mean, just in general, Kira, like just the legacy of surf culture, like the fact that, Snapper's not good, but Kira's insane. Let's go to Kira. Like, there's just so much culture, right?
Yeah. I think that they could make an argument that, Barra You know, it's a running right, Point Break, Surf Ranch, whatever.
But I mean, in New South
those
Wales,
aren't snapper.
where would you like to go in New South Wales? Like, let's answer that question, because
I don't know.
It can't be the Sydney beaches. Please tell me it's
no.
not.
Oh God. And
Yeah,
so
well, that's what you think, right? When you think New South Wales, you're like, oh, yeah, they're going to have it in there. All right.
Dude, if they actually doubled down, if in a year of non-COVID, they doubled down and go back and did what they did in the COVID year, I mean, I don't know when we actually hit rock bottom here, but
well, how well do you know those? New South Wales is pretty big. Like, what about someplace like Avoca? That point, I mean, it's not a world-class wave.
I don't know it well enough. Yeah, I don't know it well enough.
We need to take a commercial break, because I want to tell you about the Boardroom Show and Headstock.
I can't wait. We're excited to tell our listeners about athleticgreens.com/surf. Of course, it's a monthly subscription. It's a green powder. You can actually buy it once, but the key is sign up for the monthly. It shows up at your door once a month, and it keeps you healthy day in and day out. And
you've just finished your 12-ounce allotment. I see the vitality. There's a certain glow to your skin now. Your hair is standing up, perhaps more than it's ever stood up. So yes, Athletic Greens. I'm a big fan. I drink it every day. If I was sluggish at the beginning of the show, and then you noticed how much more chipper I became mid-show, this is the reason why. Exactly. All right, Scott, back to the show. Yeah, so Boardroom Show's happening September 25th and 26th, and we've got a full house. It's going to be a massive show. Seminars, exhibits, a demo morning, of course, honoring Pat Rawson and the Icons of Foam Shape-Off. 8 shapers going to get together and honor Pat Rawson by attempting to replicate one of his classic designs. Live music, Best in Show, brought to you by Zio Baffa Organic Italian Wines. Of course, the whole entire Boardroom Show presented by US Blanks, and we're excited about that. And real quick, before we get back into the show, Headstock Guitar Lovers Festival. If you're a guitar lover, you're going to want to check out Headstock. It's November 6th and 7th. It's in San Diego, and it's a consumer-facing show, much like the Boardroom Show, where luthiers, builders of guitars are going to display their wares. They're going to sell their wares, and it's going to be insane. We'll have live performances and seminars and stuff like that as well. Do you know who the shapers are for the Icons of Foam? Yeah, more or less. Right now, it's Sam Egan, Luke Egan's father. Incredible. He's coming from Australia? That right now he is. And what the heck? I know. Bill Barnfield, Chris Christensen, Timmy Patterson, Tokuda-san from Harlem Surfboards, the winner of the Tokyo Boardroom Show. I'm missing some obvious. Oh, Ricky Carroll. Couple others that I'm fading on right now. Awesome. But so Pat Rawson's chosen these shapers. Oh, Ryan Birch, of course, the defending champion from the Wayne Lynch Shape-Off. Versus the Timmy Patterson, who is the shapes boards for the defending world champion surfer. Exactly. Yeah. Dang. Lots of world champs in one place. Now, before we went to commercial, I was asking about New South Wales, and I just can't think of any spot that excites me. Now, I know there's a ton of waves, but there's a ton of waves in Southern California. It doesn't mean that WSL is going to have an event at Rincon or going to have an event at Windansea. There's just certain cultures and certain dynamics and the fabrics of communities that don't allow, and Lennox Head's a great example. Yeah, great wave. No, you can't come here. We don't want you. Yeah. And I would ask you, has the WSL built up more goodwill or less goodwill towards these types of communities? I mean, I think the communities are more apt to say, nah, no thanks, like we're good, than be like, oh yeah, we can't wait for the revenue stream that's going to be coming in because of you guys. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah, I think it's unique to each specific community. Like obviously Lennox fought it off. And then from what I heard on the ground in Narrabeen, people loved it. It was just like, they were thrilled to have the event there. And so I think it just depends on kind of how the community is. Yeah. In other words, if it's not a world-class wave, we're happy you're here. If it's a world-class wave, please don't show up. We're good. That's exactly what the difference is. Slater makes his return to Surf Ranch, by the way. Are you excited for this? Team. I put him on my fantasy team. Did you? Yeah. Terrible pick. He's a third-tier guy. I wouldn't look. He's a third-tier surfer on the
I agree with that statement.
So I picked him because I just feel like, you know, if there's ever going to be a push, it's going to be, that's where the push is going to happen. Like if it's a 5.2 or a 5.8, let's give him a 6.2.
No, I don't see him doing well in the event. There's too many spry, high energy. Yeah,
but he's so comfortable with that wave. There's a lot of guys.
Not. Dude, I mean, the last event that he surfed there, he was falling mid ride, and he was like, he wasn't nearly surfing as well as anybody else, and he was falling mid ride because he was trying to push himself to the level of Griffin Colapinto or whatever.
Yeah.
So no, I do not anticipate Kelly doing well in this event. I think that he should have sat it out, to be honest with you. I think, you know, play the injury card again, stay out of this event, make your return at Barrow where you could actually like get 10s. There's no chance of him getting a 10 at Surf Ranch. 0, you know? Interesting. Yeah, go.
Remember we had our list of top 10 waves of all time top 10 waves ever ridden, right? And we had waves like Tom Carroll's 1991 Snap at Pipeline on a Pat Rawson board, by the way. Tom Curran's Apartheid wave at J Bay in 92. Derek Ho's incredible pipe barrel I think it was in 91 or something like that. Anyway, there's all these iconic waves that everyone goes, oh yeah. I was thinking this morning, here's one that may or may not be able to crowbar into the list of top 10 all-time waves ridden. Hard list to crack, right? We've already got like 20 waves that should be on this list. Kelly Slater's very first wave at the Surf Ranch, the one that broke the internet,
I knew you were
that in there. Is that in there though? Is that one of the top 10 waves of all time ever ridden?
No, it wasn't. It was an important moment, you know, to kind of usher in this new era that we're in now of wave pools, but it wasn't like a heroically surfed wave. It was, the wave itself was beautiful, but it wasn't like the best surfing we had ever seen done.
You don't think it was a pinpoint on the timeline of surfing's history, this moment that was captured, where we all just went, holy shit, did you see what Kelly Slater created?
We did do all of that.
I mean, culturally, historically significant, maybe.
Yeah. I just don't want to acknowledge it, I guess. But I guess we would have to define the criteria a little bit clearer, because if I think about waves surfed at Surf Ranch, that one isn't even in my top 10, you know, of best waves ridden there.
When I think of waves ridden at Surf Ranch, they all seem the same.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all the same. Like the surfing that Kelly did on that very first wave, it hasn't changed that much.
Yeah. Well, so here's the Chloe Andino's out, John Florence is out, Jordy Smith is out, Julian Wilson is out, Michelle Perez is out. And those surfers are going to be replaced by Mikey Wright, Liam O'Brien, Lucas Vicente, Pat Godowskis, and Eli Hanneman. It's also a different format for this event, different structure. There's no heats, or it's a different structure of heats, and different ranking system, or like kind of tiered ranking system than any other event on tour. And that is, of course, because the waves are predictable. So every surfer, they're going to go in runs rather than heats. And each surfer, you can go look at the schedule of events, basically, or schedule of runs right now on their website. So it's like starting tomorrow morning, right at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. I don't know who the first surfer is, but let's just say Adriana De Souza, he gets his right and his left. And then the next surfer gets their right and their left. And then the next surfer gets their right and their left. And scores are based on a right and a left. There's no heat strategy in this format. There's no priority. It's just the actual surfing on the wave that gets scored, obviously.
Yeah, you and I've been lucky enough to surf there a couple times. And I will say that although the wave is basically statics, the same wave over and over, there is wind issues. There are wind conditions. And you could easily get good wind conditions, and then 3 hours later, a fellow competitor could get horrible wind conditions, at least on one of the waves.
And they've allotted time in the schedule to let people have redo if they get. I remember last time Malia Manuel got really screwed with a wave it was a left that was just like really crumbly the whole time, and so they let her redo that.
Well, the other equation, the other side of that is, look, when they have half pipe runs in Olympic snowboard, there's certain times in the day when the snow gets slushier and softer, and because the sun came out or whatever, like conditions change in those environments as well as all.
For sure. And I guess we could make the argument that you should have to respond to the wave just like you do in the ocean, right? You should just read the wave and be able to apply and respond to it and impose your will even. And the idea that we're all in a headspace here where we're expecting a section and waiting to see what a surfer does on that section versus what the previous surfer did on that section puts it in a whole different kind of mind space. And maybe that's how they justify giving somebody a redo, a mulligan.
Yeah. Interesting.
So what are your,
No.
What are your thoughts? Are you watching?
No.
Dude, I looked at the schedule of who's surfing when, and it was so unbelievably tedious. I was like, okay. And then I'm like only at 9:30 in the morning, and I was already bored through the tedium. And then I realized, I think this would be okay if I was busy moving throughout the day. So if I'm cleaning the house and I'm doing the lawn and then I'm going to work a little bit and I'm watching it a little bit here and there, I'd be okay with it. But the idea of sitting and watching an event is just painful. And the highlights will be kind of all you need. Like if they put together a 5-minute highlight package at the end of the day, I think that's adequate.
Yeah, I'm not going to be tuning in, and I wish I was excited about it. I'm simply not. And there's a lot they're competing against as well. I mean, from me personally, my standpoint, there's NHL hockey, there's San Diego Padres baseball, there's the US Open of golf, there's a friggin' pickleball tournament here in Encinitas this weekend, believe it or not, like a world tournament.
Wow, if the WSL lost to pickleball, that's bad.
Well, it's not on TV. You got to go watch it in person. But anyway, my point is there's a lot, going on.
Yeah.
So, and what about the heat? The heat is actually interesting to me. I think that's a story that is being underreported. Yeah. I know Beach Grit did a kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing on it, but I think that's actually a concern.
Yeah.
That's a massive. By the way, are they allowing spectators at this thing?
Oh, great question. I do not think so. I haven't even thought about that, but yeah, I haven't seen it advertised that they were anywhere, because usually that's something that they try to advertise heavily to sell tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, if other events haven't highlighted the need for fewer surfers on tour, I mean, this is the icing on the cake. Like when you look at that list of names and you realize how long it takes to run this event, and 20 of them don't even have a shot at not only winning the event, they don't even have a shot at getting a 9 on a wave, like, then what is the point? What is the exercise that we're doing here?
David,
don't you agree?
You're waving it off, bro.
Don't you agree? I mean, you look at that list and you're just like, why do I have to watch this guy? Why do I have to watch that guy? Why do I have to, like, there's no chance, like I said, that Kelly's going to get a 10 out there. And I'll tell you who will.
You're not going to watch Kelly?
I'll watch him because it's part of my job, but.
Will you watch Adriana?
No, heck no. I'll look away out of spite. If he comes on the screen, I'm just going to go like this. But I'll tell you, I'm going to give you my picks. Okay. The obvious are Gabriel Medina to win it. I think Idolo will give him a run for his money. I think Felipe might be in that third spot. Yes. 4 and 5, I'm actually going to give to Griffin Colapinto, and then Kanoa Igarashi, I think would be a contender in number 5.
Those are perfect choices.
Kanoa is looking spry. He's riding the dark arts, and he has, I think, the mental fortitude to not fall. So I could see him getting barreled, big carves, blowing the tail, not falling, which is something that, I mean, name your surfer. They will, I could see.
David Scales.
4 times in a row.
You teed that up for me.
I mean, honestly though, like everybody else who's trying to go as big as those guys I just named, they'll end up falling on 1 or 2 of their rides and they'll just wash out in the early rounds.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Challenger Series is going to be starting up at the end of the kind of at the end of the CT season.
Yeah.
the only event that runs before the CT season ends is the US Open on August 2nd, which will be interesting. The Aracera Pro is in September.
Yeah, there's two in Europe.
The Quick Pro also in September, the week after.
And then Hawaii.
And then, Haleiwa and Sunset.
Yeah, Stab did a really good rundown on this. I don't know if you saw this. It was basically like who's going to lose their job because of COVID.
Meaning pro surfers that'll lose their jobs?
Pro surfers are going to lose their QS guys are going to lose their job because.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for a local guy, Jake Marshall. He's been chipping away at it.
I forgot about him.
I know. Well, I think he might have at one point he maybe gave up, but he's back on. And basically the summary of the Stab piece is that it usually takes 4 to 5 years for guys. And those guys usually start at like 120th, and the next year they're at 80, and the next year they're at 60, and the next year they're at 25th, and the next year they're at 9, and they make it. Like there's a charting, an upward, graph that moves upward, left to right. And those are the guys that do good. And Jake has that movement, has that sort of lineage up the chart.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see Jake because he's a local guy and his dad's a good guy and his family are good people. That's a purely biased opinion, but he's a red hot surfer. And frankly, he was about to qualify, except for, you could argue that they pushed Parco through a heat because it was his last year on tour. And, it's neither here nor there, but it was one of those toss-up heats where you're like, God, if he could have made that heat, he would have qualified.
Was that at Lowers?
No, it was at Haleiwa.
And so that's also Pipe, Sunset, and Haleiwa have all been approved. The permitting has been approved for 2022, 23, and 24 for the WSL. So that's all good news.
There's a ton of drama there, even though I poo-poo the QS and like kind of, you've heard me say, oh, whatever, there is a ton of drama there that could be that has been and can continue to be made into really good short snippet stories. And they did a really good interview. It's not super deep, but Stab talked to Jake Patterson, and he's sort of the coach guy that gets these guys on tour. He's sort of the go-to guy, one of them. Anyway, there's potential for great content there if it's done right. The drama behind qualifying for the tour.
My must-see moment, obviously, we were promoting it last week, even though we hadn't seen it yet, is Lost Track Atlantic, episode 2. It's better than episode 1. I mean, the surfing is really incredible in this episode. They make it to North Africa. There's obviously barreling right-handers, and the way that Torin, like those mid-lengths that he rides, you would think have limitations. I haven't identified any limitations. Like he rides those things, he had to knife into sections on those waves, that you would think you would need a high performance 6-foot shortboard to knife into. And he's knifing in and then pulling up under and weaving and navigating through the barrels. It's incredible. He's an incredible surfer.
Yeah, I think that's what it is here. What you have is just, you have a 20-something-year-old surfer who's at the top of his game. How old is he? I bet he's 26 or something.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, that's when you're at the top of your physical, and so, he's just a great surfer and he's at the peak. And so he could probably ride anything really, really good. Yeah. And he's another guy that might be an electric acid surfboard test guy, but.
Yeah. Before you sign us off, do you know what Adios and Aloha auto corrects to if you try to write it in your phone?
No, what?
Radios and Alpha.
Oh.
A listener said that in an email he sent to us. He signed it off with Adios and Aloha, and then said, P.S. By the way, it auto corrects to Radios and Alpha. So if you ever want to sign off the show with Radios and Alpha, Scott.
All right. Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Is our Kook Surfer Magazine, or do we not even want to go there?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, let's go there.
I kind of did too.
Do it.
I was looking at my Kooker Duke. Oh, I really don't care to even talk about it. It doesn't bother me one way or the other.
Tell the listeners what you referenced.
Surfer Magazine put out a top 5 podcast. I think it was top 5. Was it top 5?
Yeah.
Top 5 podcasts that you should listen to. And none of David's offerings were included, which is bullshit. But that's just my opinion. And look, that's all this thing is opinion. But and of course the Boardroom podcast and this one Spit not in there as one of the top 5 podcasts, surfing podcasts that are must listens. So, take it with a grain of salt.
So I had a number of listeners send this to me, and they're kind of the consensus. They all had various things to say, but the one thing that they all said was, holy cow, Surfer Magazine is irrelevant, entirely irrelevant. Like, did they just Google? Because even if they Googled surf podcasts, our names would come up, and then if they were running any objective metric, let's say number of downloads, number of Apple reviews on iTunes, rating aside from the reviews themselves, the ratings on iTunes, or if they ran any of those objective criteria, we'd be at the top of the list on all of those lists. And so people were like, was this just a vendetta? Like, is there somebody who just doesn't like you guys who published? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Probably somebody who doesn't like me. Who knows? I hope that's not the case. And maybe
and you started podcasting at Surfer Magazine.
Exactly.
Like and so whoever wrote that article probably doesn't even know that detail. And so what I replied to most people was like, I wouldn't have even clicked on that article. Like, yeah, Surfer Magazine, unfortunately, has lost relevance and they're behind the trend. Whenever they're writing about something, it's like something that, we were talking about a year ago. So it doesn't surprise me that they would miss the mark on this as well. But I don't know. I don't know what else I was going to say about that. I wouldn't have even clicked on it anyways. I wasn't leaning on them for any insights into what's happening in the podcast world. No, and I also figured it was probably written by one person, and that one person's fully entitled to their opinion. And if it's not a outright vendetta, then they probably just don't like our show as much as they like the other ones, which is totally valid. They're entitled to write that. But they should put their name on the article. And there wasn't the name of the author. It was just written by, quote, Surfer.
I guess people work there still. Like, I thought they closed.
Dude, I don't know we knew everybody that was working there, and none of them are working there. So it was purchased by whoever owns Men's Journal. So maybe they have kind of in-house staff,
probably an intern or something that works
for all the back end, who's writing these little pieces for all the various magazines, but I saw it, I guess, with any of these things, I feel it as an opportunity to seize the day more than anything. I see, because I don't take personal offense to it. I see it as we're interacting with listeners day in and day out. And we're taking their pulse every day. So we kind of know what trends are happening in real time. And if what we viewed as kind of a legacy surf media company is missing the trend and the pulse that hard, like, wow, okay, it's our opportunity just to run really fast, and to create as much runway. Like, what other industries could you come in and disrupt in this way? Like, they've just opened the door for us completely to maintain this one-on-one engagement with the listenership and the fan base, and continue catering content to them based on what they're interested in and what they want to see, who they want to hear interviewed, all that sort of stuff. You still listening?
I am. No, I totally am. And my take on this is, okay, that's fine. I've always just been like, what? Me personally, I'm not for everybody. There's definitely people that are like anti, and that's fine. You just can't please everyone. It's none of my business what other people think of me.
Yeah, which is why I didn't take it personally, but I looked at it from kind of a business perspective and just thought, Jesus, man, this is a real opportunity here. They're missing the plot of what people are actually listening to.
Yeah. It's too bad for Surfer.
It's really, it's been a challenge in my adult life to see some of my heroes fall from grace, or just to not have the sheen of youth where you just idolize who these people are, and you get to be an adult and you're just like,
by the way, I was up at Surfing Heritage and Culture Center the other day, and remember we were going to do the podcast from John Severson's desk.
Yeah.
And I talked to him. I'm like, God, right before COVID hit, David and I were just about to start doing each and every podcast from John Severson's desk, the founder of Surfer Magazine. They have his desk, the one that he worked at for decades and decades on classic Surfer Magazine. And it would have been so fun for us to podcast from the desk of John Severson. And we would have done it with great reverence and respect. And And then I was like, I don't know, David and I are pretty comfortable with Zoom. It's so much easier than to drive up, him to drive down and me to drive up, you know, each week. Anyway, that was an opportunity lost, but
COVID interrupted it. It's not our fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's code for we're going to continue to do Zoom podcasts. It's so much easier. They're good.
It works fine.
The beauty is that we had so much one-on-one, you know, just from before that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Scott, good show.
Yes.
Go surfing.
Until next time, adios and aloha.